Alexandra Mooney, and my project is Disability Social Inclusion Metric Development.
My name is Austin Puente, and I'm working on the Capital Improvements Budget Data Analysis and Recommendations Project.
My name is Dan Petty, and I'm an intern with the Patient Advocate Services Program.
My name is Kelly Hyde, and the name of my project is Asset Replacement.
I'm Kendall Lu. I'm doing the Strategic Management Performance Portal.
I'm Lucille Johnson, and the project I'm working on is the International Green Construction Code Green Building Education Program.
Hi, my name is Mark Torrance, and the project I'm working on is Strategic Management Digital Engagement.
My name is Raquel Torres, and I'm doing the Grant Standardized Reporting.
My name is Sam Goodman. I work with the Park Assets Project.
Hello, my name is William Jingo. I was hired as an intern by the Strategic Management and Diversity Office to work on a project called Youth Safety and Juvenile Crime Diversion Metrics and Strategies.
What surprised me most about working on this project is by far the performance measures that the city of Tempe's put forward. One of them that really stood out was the quality of life performance measure. I just think it's not as common to see quality of life, a performance measure like that, put so high forward.
My normal day so far has been doing a lot of research, looking at how other cities are doing their park inventory or how forestries are sampling large tracts of land.
I'm trying to get a sense of what it's like to work with real-world data in a real-world situation with real-world needs. School data sets are always clean and tidy, and the answers are always obvious. Here, they're not. So just getting that kind of experience is what I'm looking for.
Tempe welcomes you as you are. I think that phrase really reflects the project that I'm working on with trying to make Tempe a more inclusive environment by saying that it's not what the person is coming in with, but it's how the environment is coming to the person.
And I really love learning so much, and so this opportunity with this internship program was just very exciting to me. So I welcome new challenges, and I look forward to learning as much as I can while I'm here.
Well, welcome everybody. This is our first Strategic Management Intern Program Capstone Project presentation. And I want to shout out to Mark Torrance. This was one of his projects as our intern, to do a montage of all of our interviews with our interns from ASU. In September, the city of Tempe started an intern program, and it's the first centralized program we've ever had. And its main goal was to advance the council priorities. And so departments provided projects that they thought would accelerate the achievement of the goals. And those projects were then matched with interns who had the skills, the knowledge, and the abilities to bring their academic life into real-world challenges. And so we have 10 interns today as part of our first wave, and they'll be presenting between 4 and 5 minutes. So they have a TED Talk that they have been asked to present to you. If you're interested in becoming part of the program, we do have our cycle is opening up for spring. For departments, projects are due on December 10th. And for interns, we open our registration and our application process on December 13th. So we're really happy to have you here today. We thank all the supervisors who worked with the interns. They actually have a couple more weeks till they are finished, but we're in the throes of finals as well. So I give them a lot of credit for having this project as well on their plate. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact the Office of Strategic Management Diversity. And with that, we are going to kick off with our very first intern, Kelly Hyde. And Kelly is a senior at ASU. And she's in the School of Urban and Environmental Planning. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Hey everybody, how are you doing? Good. Okay, so my name's Kelly Hyde, as she just said, and in May I'm going to get my master's in urban and environmental planning. And I've chosen this quotation to share with you all today, if you all can read it, and it just really emulates how good I felt about moving to Arizona after being, I'm a Virginia transplant. So it's just been a really great experience for me. So anyway, what do you all consider when you think about cities' asset management? For me, I learned it takes a tremendous amount of work and effort to manage all the city's assets, and we'll learn a little bit about that. And so my objective was to help the city achieve its 100% compliance goals with refurbishment and replacement of assets. And to do this, I had to do a few different things, and namely that's going to be researching with public works staff And that was needing to conduct research to see what systems they already have in place and how the information is stored and recorded. And so the key activities for me was to first name the assets, and I had to do this by going through the CIP book. And then I would develop survey questions, follow-up interviews with the asset managers, and then analyze my findings. So next you're gonna see these are the asset managers that I worked with, and a couple of them have brought on additional help for me. But unfortunately, you can also see that water utilities is not represented in the data for this project. And so next I had to develop the survey questions I talked to you about, but this proved to be a little bit difficult. Again, water utilities was not available for this project, but Charlie Bladeen, who used to be a part of Public Works, proved to be a great resource as well. So some of the things I found were there are a lot of different software programs being used for asset management, and this is minutely frustrating only because they're used for different things and they don't coordinate together always well. And you know, they have to consider Tempe's 311 app as well. So the findings, even if they had the capability to have things like inventory, life cycle, and condition rating in there, not all of them did, or some did and some didn't. And but they do have things like industry recommendations, and that goes into their standard operating procedures. And oftentimes I found too that they had created these in-house as a means to fulfill that need. And you're gonna have manufacturer recommendations, or maybe even something like the state issuing a set of criteria. So in prioritizing how to handle these assets, criticality and age were probably the most used, but other things like cost and condition rating are also factored. But then I wanted the asset managers also to do kind of a self-assessment to let me know where they thought that they were. And they all answered honestly, and they see that there is room for improvement with their systems, but they generally think that they're meeting good goals. And so with that, the 100% compliance measure, I asked the managers if they could give me a set value for how they think that they are reaching the city's goals. And it was a really hard question to ask, and a lot of them had a difficulty with it. And what I found was they really couldn't give me a number. And this was because they manage so many various different types of assets that require different types of assessment that it's kind of like comparing apples to oranges. So that was probably one of the biggest challenges of this project, and I'm trying to find a good number to give for my report. But basically, it was that, and meeting with the asset managers and kind of discovering some of their systems issues that proved most challenging. But a lot of them mentioned, and this might be something that I put in my final report, which is the deliverable here. That's going to be used as a baseline for the public works staff to see if how they can further assess their goals. But my recommendations, I think, would be Kona. That was a frequently mentioned software system that might make things more cohesive across many departments. I think staffing needs to be assessed too. Someone needs to be dedicated to put in the information into these systems. And so anyway, how I would like to leverage my internship, I think research and analysis skills, that's always beneficial no matter where you go. And I'm a member of a few organizations as it is, so I would like to use this experience to tell them about what I've learned and see where that takes me as well. But my main takeaway is I have to thank Julie, who's here today. Marilyn and her were both wonderful to work with. They've given me a lot of autonomy to approach this project and be creative with it. But I think in terms of the project, the main takeaway is that many different systems probably cause inefficiencies. So lastly, I think the broader thing I'd like everyone to think about is these systems that are good because they have a dedicated person to better them. But if you can't, just start something and perfect it later. Anyway, thank you.
So Kelly was brave in the format. We asked each of the interns to present what they learned, what was their deliverable, what were some of the challenges, and what were their recommendations to the city. But they had to use auto advance so that they wouldn't be able to camp out on one slide, and some of them have finals at 7:10 tonight, so we don't want to be here that late. So thank you, Kelly, for that. Up next is Austin Puente, and he worked with the Budget Management Office in Public Works. He's a senior at ASU in urban planning. And he's also one of the most dapperly dressed interns.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Wait. All righty. There we go. All right. So my name is Austin Puente. I was Mark Day and Marilyn DeRosa's strategic management intern. I'm getting my bachelor's in Bachelor of Science in Urban Planning in May from Arizona State University. And one quote that really kind of sticks out with me no matter what is going to be a quote from Walt Disney. And it's just that all our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. And so my project overview. I chose 4 images that are representative of Tempe. And the main reason I chose those 4 images is because they're also representative of them all being CIP projects. So a couple characteristics of CIP projects are, these are high monetary value projects. They're usually high ticket, about $100,000 per project. They have a useful life of 5 years. And these projects also, they usually result in the construction or renovation of a fixed asset, such as repaving rural road, for an example. And my project overview, my project performance measurement was 5.09, which is to spend or encumber 90% of capital budget funds in that budgeted year. And our baseline last year was 62%. So my goal was to go into the project and see what opportunities there could be to help the city reach the goal of 90%. And that can be challenging because sometimes it's overlooked, but CIP is a huge program. It's a $650 million program with over 600 main and sub projects. And to get to that data, I looked at a couple of processes. I looked at the current processes, and I looked for opportunities for efficiency. And after that, I analyzed 10 years worth of CIP data. And my target for that was, I was looking for programs that were below 75% on their CIP rate. I interviewed project managers and engineering staff. And after gathering my qualitative and quantitative data, I just kind of looked for any trends that I found. And we targeted most of the general obligation fund projects because those, they have limited funding, and those can also have the biggest opportunity to lower the CIP performance rate. And some of the challenges with this project were the CIP process and program in general. It took me about a week to kind of get a full grasp of what the CIP program and process is. So once I kind of figured out exactly how that works, I was able to find opportunities for improvement within the program and processes. And I need to get better at timing slides. And 3 of my deliverables for the CIP, my first one is going to be the analysis of the CIP budget data. The second was workflow, process flow charts, that's the word. Process flow charts and recommendations. The first I'm going to be discussing primarily for today is the analysis, because I'll have a full report regarding the flow charts and the recommendations for Mark in a final report. And some of the recommendations I do have, I sent out a survey, and I got a lot of positive feedback regarding more workshops for the CIP to help better understand. I also had another recommendation, which is for the transparency, because as I said, CIP is a huge program. It's not A to B. There's a bunch of steps in that process. So sometimes transparency does get lost in between development. And another recommendation I do have is regarding the archaeological side, where sometimes you could be maybe replacing a street or putting in a park, and you find something that now you have to completely halt progress, and that can really extend timelines. Another opportunity I found was public involvement versus public commitment. There could be something maybe to invest more time in, because you could possibly find a couple of characteristics that can extend that timeline. That was kind of a trickier one, just because anytime there's public involvement, it can get a little tricky. And I did mention the engineering workload, just because there are a lot of projects that do go through engineering right now. And what I learned through this internship, firstly, it's going to be how a city works. That's huge for my career. Being an urban planner, you really got to know your city functionality, whether you're private or public, just because that's going to drive everything you do. And another thing I learned was data analysis, because in all my classes, it's pretty much just examples, but this time I had real world numbers that I had to actually look at and analyze. So that was really nice to actually chain it up and see how it works in the real world compared to class. And then I got a huge appreciation for a municipality staff, because until you're in their shoes, you kind of never really know what a city does or how much they actually put forward. And any questions or comments? All righty, thank you.
Okay, and so to follow Austin, we have Alexandra Mooney, who's a sophomore at ASU, and her major is elementary education. But Alexandra had a passion for those with disabilities and special education, so it was a great fit with her project.
So hi there, I'm Alexandra Moody, and I'm the Strategic Management Intern for Disability Social Inclusion, and I'm working with Michelle Stokes. So I'm currently a sophomore at Arizona State University, obtaining my bachelor's degree in elementary education, and I'm also working on a certificate in cross-sector collaboration. So I put in a couple of my favorite things to do at ASU, just because I believe in tradition a lot, and so I've really enjoyed things like hiking a mountain, going to football games, and yeah, so I really enjoy the university life and Tempe as a city. So a quote that I picked out is that when everyone plays, we all win. So I actually saw this on a Microsoft commercial last night, which is kind of funny. But basically it just says that when everyone in our community is able to participate, we can only strive in the end. And so if our residents of Tempe are participating, they're getting employed, they're using different public services, our city is only gonna get more prosperous. And the commercial was really cool too, so I would Google that. So let's take it back to the 1960s, one of the biggest and most relevant and recent marches for disability rights. So this was more for ADA compliance rights, so making sure that people can use bathrooms, people can park, people can move their wheelchairs freely. And so even though this was a really cool march and really big for its time, it's still going on today. So even though we see the wheelchair signs around, we see different ADA signs, it still doesn't mean that there's social inclusion with ADA. And that's what we're working on. So every time Michelle and I looked at making a new metric, we asked ourselves this question: what metrics can we develop to measure how Tempe is increasing social inclusion of people with disabilities while decreasing isolation and poverty? So this is important stuff. This is important just because if we're decreasing isolation and poverty, then people are getting employed. People are making money and making their own independence resources from that and not getting it all from the city. And so a little bit about my project is that we started off with 10 metrics. So with that 10 metrics in the couple months that I'm gonna be working with this internship is that I narrowed it down to 5 different areas. So those areas are transportation, employment, equality, programs, and events. And then with those 5 areas, I created 5 metrics for those areas. So the reason why metrics are important, because metrics are a measurement, measurements equal importance. Other cities aren't doing this. Other cities aren't looking at their social inclusion and saying that we need to measure this to hold cities accountable for how they're working with people with disabilities. So with creating the metrics, we're creating a measurement that Tempe can follow year after year to make sure that they're being held accountable for that. So some of the key activities we did, I visited a few different disability centers and attended different meetings. And so this is a picture of Ability 360. Really cool center. It kind of shows the highest standard for disability inclusion. And then the other one was I met with different city departments to be able to get feedback on my metrics. A really big piece of my metrics have been talking to the departments, making sure that what we're measuring is actually going to be measurable in the end, that the data is available, and that it's something that's going to move the wheel a bit more. So a couple deliverables. In the end of my internship, I'm creating kind of a master plan for the next person to come in and be able to create the next 5 areas of metrics. So this is an example of the data charts that I've been creating. So it starts with the metrics. So here's an example from the transportation area. And the metric is the number of bus stops in Tempe that do not exceed a 15-minute wait time. So this is important because some residents who have disabilities aren't able to wait at bus stops for more than 15 minutes, whether that be for other medications they're taking or regulation of body heat and body temperature, different things like that. So we recognize that the data location came from Valley Metro, and that's going to be a percent in the end. So a few challenges. There is no one-size-fits-all metric, unfortunately. We have to keep on mending them and making them work for everyone. And then a couple main takeaways. So nothing about us without us. This is a phrase that Michelle reminded me a lot that I really took away, just saying that no one can be left out of the discussion, no matter what community you're collaborating with. Another one is being open-minded. I realized that my ideas were constantly mendable, and they should be. They should be able to kind of move with where we're going. And then treating everyone with respect and grace. I think this is huge in the disability community, that disabilities aren't always physical, they're not always visual. So you have to remember that you never know what someone's going through, and you have to have patience. And then lastly, this is just something that I looked at every day when I walked into my office, the sign that Tempe welcomes you as you are. And so I think that this logo really, or the slogan really goes with my project by saying that no matter where you come from, what kind of disabilities or abilities you're coming with, race, ethnicity, everything, you're still welcome into the city, and you will be supported by the city departments. Thank you.
As we transition to the next presentation, I'd like to invite Raquel Torres up. She worked with Human Services and Tempe Community Council, and she's a senior at ASU in Interdisciplinary Studies. But word on the street is if you want a financial person, she is an expert from her team telling me this. So welcome, Raquel.
All right, hi everyone. My name is Raquel Torres, and I did the grant standardized reporting. I did that with the Human Services Department and Community Partnerships and Resources. A little bit about me, I am an ASU senior, and I'm majoring in interdisciplinary studies with a focus in applied business, data analytics, and business. And I'm also getting my certificate with the Next Generation Service Corps. One of my favorite quotes is, "Don't wait, the time will never be just right." And I stay true to this just because my mom would always tell me to hold off until I have a stable career or have enough money to be able to do the activities I want to do, like traveling. But every single time I've gone with that adventure, I've always gained something valuable from that experience. So like I said, I'm working with the Human Services Department, trying to help achieve the 3.10 performance measure, which is to ensure agencies who receive human service grants from the city achieve the performance goals related to homelessness, youth, domestic violence, working poor, seniors, and individuals with disabilities. And just something interesting is that the number of funded programs fluctuates each year. So if a program was funded last year, it might not be funded this year. So sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to standardize each of those reportings. Processes, I went to the Tempe Community Council office just down the street. I went every Tuesday and Thursday, and I just went to review data from the 17-18 fiscal year. Methods, I reviewed data in the shared drive and created reports from that data. Found correlations in successful outcomes versus group meeting participation. Compare data from 16-17 to 17-18 fiscal years. And then some of the strategies, I had weekly check-in meetings with Octavia, just to ensure clarity and progress and performance measurement strategies. And I also compared future data points. So some of the deliverables, I created these couple graphs. So I was just comparing the participation frequency with the group meetings and the successful indicators that were met. I chose the homeless population just because they had more group meetings offered throughout that fiscal year compared to the other target populations. And I also just took a look at all the agencies. I just came to the conclusion that there really isn't much of a correlation just due to the fact that some of the indicators were not measurable. So that was one of my challenges for that. And I also created this spreadsheet, just compiled a list of all the agencies, programs, the indicators, and whether they had met them or not, if they were measurable. So like I said, some of the challenges, not all the outcomes were measurable, and that's just sometimes due to the fact of the data collection methodology. So compared to this year, it seemed a little bit out of date. This year, they're able to provide more examples of what a measurable indicator outcome should look like. So compared to last year, it was a little bit difficult to analyze that data. But for next steps, continuing to collect data to update performance measurement strategies, creating reports for the following years, and finding patterns in work group participation and successful outcomes. And then some of the takeaways. I used to volunteer for Future for Kids at the Boys and Girls Club a couple years ago. And I thought it was just so interesting to see the behind the scenes of what a program actually does compared to what I saw when I was volunteering. So I thought it was a huge takeaway. And also that the human services programs are important even if one does not directly see the benefit in funding them. I was once in an Uber, and the driver had told me that he was a little upset that our tax money was being funded for these human services programs. And I got a little defensive. And I was like, why don't you see the benefit in this? I think it's important for everyone to see that even if you're not directly benefiting from them right now, you will in the future, either with senior services or if an unexpected event happens. I think it's important just to have those programs established in case those emergencies happen. And also good communication is essential in a successful project. If I did not have the open communication with Octavia and the rest of the Tempe Community Council team members, I would not have been as successful as I would have. But thank you. That's all I have for you.
Okay, and we're going to go totally to a different spectrum and talk about IGCC with Lucille Johnson, who's a senior with the Innovation and Society program at ASU.
So hello, I'm Lucille Johnson. I'm from San Diego. I moved here last year. I'm a student at ASU pursuing a minor in sustainability and a bachelor's in the School for the Future of Innovation and Society. We like to study science and technology, modern and historical innovations, and how it interacts with society. We like to refer to it as Future School very humbly. We study technology, how it interacts with society, and I like to study emerging technologies and their impact on the planet and how we can leverage them to preserve environmental health. I was given the opportunity to be a part of the IGCC Education and Certification Internship Program, which is part of the strategic priority of sustainable growth and development, and the performance measure under that for renewable energy. 20% of city operations is the goal. The purpose of this internship was to research the International Green Construction Code as part of the which was developed by the International Code Council, and is focused on the environmental impact of the entire life cycle of a building. This was a statistic that stood out to me. 39% of total U.S. energy consumption was consumed by residential and commercial buildings in 2017, which I figured I could draw two conclusions from this. One being that improvements in this area could create a huge impact on a statistic that represents a seemingly daunting reality, and that Tempe must have some shred of the responsibility for this, and I think that gives us a great opportunity to make an impact in that area. When I began my research, I had to do some background research on some code jargon and standards, stuff that I hadn't really learned about before. This is sort of what my research process looked like, so it was a little all over the board, but I looked at codes in other municipalities in the Valley, as well as what incentive programs they were using. I did the same thing with other cities outside of the Valley, such as Seattle and Jacksonville, San Diego. I actually had correspondence with these cities and talked to them about their programs. I also looked into electric vehicles and how they fit into preparing cities for the future that is coming. My final product will be a white paper in this final presentation that will make policy recommendations to the city of Tempe on how to move forward green building in the city. I'm very grateful for the Community Development Department and Strategic Management for giving me this opportunity and all of the resources I needed. Some next step for Tempe, I'm just going to briefly touch on these, but I would say adopt the 2018 version of the International Green Construction Code to position Tempe as an emerging leader in green building, and also because it is the most closely tied with LEED certification. So as a voluntary code, I also think that Tempe should make sure that all new city-funded projects are striving for the highest possible level of LEED certification, And in order to support this, I think there should be a green education and incentive program that would include incentive zoning strategies and expedited permitting and review processes, which would be overseen by what I would recommend to be a green building specialist. Every successful city that I spoke with who had a good green building program had a green building specialist. So I just want to wrap up with a quote by Bucky Fuller, or not necessarily a quote, but he called the Earth Spaceship Earth. One of the titles of his book was Operating Manual for Spaceship Earth, and I was really inspired by that when I learned about it last semester, because he says that we all need to become active crew members on this spaceship rather than just passengers. And I've been interested in sustainability for a while, and I think that the impacts of climate change on a local and international level have inspired me to become a crew member rather than a passenger. And I think that Tempe, by continuing the research that I've done in this internship and leveraging its reach as a city, has an opportunity to recruit more crew members who can make a rippling, substantial, and lasting impact in this area. Thank you.
Thanks, Lucy. And so now we have Dan Petty, who I think has the biggest fan club here today from FIRE. And Dan, even though he's a mathematician, he actually worked with our patient advocacy services program.
I'm not a mathematician yet. I don't get that card for a while. So, first of all, I just want to thank everyone for this internship. It's been an honor and a privilege just working alongside everyone. Last Monday, I got an opportunity to ride along with Engine 271 and 278. It's not at all where I thought math would take me in my life, so that was a very eye-opening experience. I can give a 5-minute spiel just on what PAS does, but here's the elevator pitch in a 2-story building. Basically, patients who frequently call 911 for non-emergent chronic medical issues aren't well served by emergency crews. It's just a mismatch of resources. So PAS takes referrals from fire crews and others, assesses the patient's needs, and then refers them to the relevant and appropriate community resources like the SAIL program, TEROS, providers of geriatric palliative care, and assisted living facilities. From the start, I wanted to get an understanding of the frequent caller situation. So I analyzed the patient data that's stored in ImageTrend, which is what the fire department uses for all the medical incidents. Unfortunately, the default is to create a new patient record for each incident. So frequent callers have many records in there. To get an accurate count of unique patients, I use outside software to group patients by date of birth and then link very similar names together. In the end, this is the result here. Those are the unique patients. And a tiny sliver in red you can see. Those are the 211 patients with 5 or more incidents. So what kind of impact do those patients have? Overall, you can see they account for 10% of all of the fire department's medical incidents. In fact, 4 individuals were 1% of all of their incidents in 2017. So what are the attributes of frequent callers? Every fire crew could rattle them off. I'm not going to tell anything new to them, but I wanted to use my skill set to approach the problem. So using a regression technique and a machine learning technique, I came up with these attributes here. I won't read them off, but you can see them. But by far the most important factor in determining whether or not someone has a medical incident in the next 30 days is whether or not they had one in the previous 30 days. It makes sense. If you're trying to predict whether something's going to happen next month, you'll see whether it happened last month. So with that in mind, I created a report, an ImageTrend that identifies those who called twice or more in the last week based off their date of birth. I'm proud to say this has identified several patients that have otherwise would have been overlooked and were really in need, and PAS was able to work with them and help them. Finally, I was tasked with assessing a PAS performance measure. On the website right now, you've got it listed as a 90% graduation rate from the program. I believe the language is going to shift to the discharge rate, but I think overall it's still problematic. Being discharged from the hospital, we all know that's a black or white thing. You're either on one side of the door or you're on the other. Having read nearly every single PAS incident report that's in ImageTrend, I can tell you there's a ton of gray. I think a more appropriate measure would be to focus on the number of referrals to outside programs and outside resources. First, it avoids the problem inherent with using a percentage. The community is better served, I think, in my opinion, and I'm sure you'll agree that a 50% graduation rate or discharge rate among 100 patients is better than 90% among 10. Second, establishing a baseline of how many referrals have been made in the past. That's something that's doable. That data is there, it can be found, and we could base that baseline on something factual. Third, focusing on a number of total referrals encourages seeking out additional patients, regardless of how difficult or intractable their situation may seem. So what will I take away from this internship? A lot. But one story sticks with me, and I'd like to share it with you. A little before I came on board, fire crews had gone out a couple times to a young man here in town, ASU student, for an anxiety-related issues. Fire crews knew that he had a friend in his apartment complex that had overdosed recently. They didn't want to see him go down that same path. So in that act of compassion, they recommended him or referred him to PAS. And PAS asked him, talked to him, asked him what was going on. He said, well, things have changed at work and I've lost my insurance. I'm also behind on my rent. I'm close to becoming homeless. I don't have anyone else to lean on here in town. And on top of all that, he was HIV positive. He was running out of his antiviral medicines. I don't know what you would do if you woke up that young man's shoes. You could start a GoFundMe and hope for a miracle. PAS contacted the Area Agency on Aging, which has a relationship with the Ryan White Foundation. Within a day or so, they had a caseworker working with them. They paid off his back rent so he would not become homeless. They got him a job with insurance so he can get his medicines. They connected him with counseling. They connected him with rehab. You know, all those resources were out there waiting for him. He just needed to be connected to them. And that's what PAS does. You know, in the end, this young man did not need a miracle. He just needed an advocate. Thank you.
Okay, and from the Office of Strategic Management and Diversity, we have Kendall Lu, who's up to speak to you about quality assurance with our performance portal.
All right, hello everyone, I'm Kendall Lu, and I was the Strategic Management Performance Portal intern, mostly doing a lot of quality assurance and quality control. So a little bit about me, I'm a tourism development and management major, and I'm also working on a community sports management minor, as well as 2 certificates in convention sales and meeting planning and cross-sector leadership. One of my favorite quotes is, start where you are, use what you have, and do what you can. That was said by Arthur Ashe. So a lot of what I did was quality control, which I see as detection, and quality assurance, which is prevention. The detection is detecting any information that's misconstrued, that's out of date, or that just is not correct, and that prevents the public from being misinformed and seeing one thing and then seeing another thing later on. This addressed the council priorities for building a connection with the public, because ultimately everyone in this room is a public servant and we're here to serve the needs of the public. And that's important for making them feel included in the decisions of the city, because ultimately, as I said, it's going to influence them the most. So one of the biggest things that I did with that was updating the worksheets, which is the other side of the performance portal, and making it a lot easier to see while still keeping the old format so that we have the history of and tracking of the changes that are being made to the worksheets as well. Another thing that I made was, in the specific SharePoint for the Strategic Management Office, a lot of the performance measures were scattered, so it was nice, or what I did is I created a tracking list to kind of see where everything is, and also take a look at if they were missing, if they were retired, if they were achieved, and making sure that all the information was up to date. Some other tasks that I completed was ensuring that the employee list was up to date for Wydell, and then also taking evaluation forms from sessions that Aaron had taught and putting it all onto a single document so it's easy to see all the most important information. One of the biggest challenges was, obviously there's a lot of measures, and with quality control you have to take the time to go through every single one. So obviously that took a lot of time and it was a lot of work, but got it done. And then also there were also many different facets. So there's, with the performance portal, there's the worksheets and then the public facing portal and then a SharePoint. So there's a lot of different people looking at the same measures and a lot of people working on the same documents. So getting all that on the same page was pretty difficult. One of the main deliverables that I felt that I brought was the department working on these measures for so long can get immersed in it, and having a fresh set of eyes look at it can be good, because when the public looks at it, they might not understand the same lingo and the terminology that people in the office would, because they're immersed in it. So going forward, one of the main recommendations I always have is getting on the same page and saying, okay, this is how we're going to do things going forward. This is how we're going to update it. And this is how we did it in the past and why it didn't work. And making sure that everyone's just congruent, I guess, and there's continuity. Leveraging the internship. This is the last of my cross-sector leadership certificate internships. I've needed to complete an internship in each sector, so this will be the culmination of that. And I'll also have an appreciation for the city of Tempe. I didn't realize before this how much work really went into the public sector. And another key takeaway is a lot of jobs that I've been looking at have required or seeked experience in Excel and Outlook. And before the internship, I had no experience with Outlook, and I have even more experience with Excel now, so we'll be good with that. And then I also learned the importance of quality assurance and quality control, taking the time to look at what you're doing and saying, okay, this isn't working, and finding those flaws and fixing them before it's too late, and it just kind of snowballs to something bigger than what you can handle. And lastly, working on this project in real time has been very different than working on a project in class, because in class you kind of, everything's laid out in front of you. There's not too many moving parts, but in real world application, you're gonna have many people working on the same thing. There's gonna be variables that you're not ready for. So getting experience with that was huge. And I just wanted to finish by thanking you for the opportunity for allowing me to aid in my professional development and gain the experience with the city of Tempe here. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to invite up Sam Goodman. He is our only graduate student as part of the internship program this semester, and he is with Geographic Information Studies.
All right, hello, my name is Sam Goodman. I work for the Park Asset Inventory Project. Little information about me: I'm originally from Huntsville, Alabama, which will soon be home to a new AA minor league baseball team called the Rock City Trash Pandas. I graduated from Florida State with a Bachelor of Science in Accounting and minors in Forensic Accounting and Geography, and I'm currently in the MAS GIS program at ASU. And so let's say light number 6 on pole number 2 goes out in Kiwanis Park, or bench number 9 in Dwight Park is broken. How do you know where those things are? The simple answer is you don't. So I was tasked with coming up with a way or methods to help overcome this problem. And so I started out by doing research on different field data collection methods. And the two most prevalent ones I came across were in forestry studies, where they'll superimpose a grid over an area and they go plot by plot. And then archaeology, where they'll walk back and forth in straight lines until they cover the entire study area. And so what ultimately we decided to do was a combination of those two methods, where we decided to divide the park up into roughly equal rows and start in the northwest corner of the most northern row and count all of the light poles at each feature that we come across, those features being the dog parks, playgrounds, baseball field, etc. And then move down to the next row, but this time start in the northeast corner, and just repeat that snaking process back and forth until the entire park has been covered. The challenge to that is that that works great for square parks like Clark Park. What happens when you have an oddly shaped park like Hudson? If you try and divide that up into rows, some rows are going to be much longer than others. There's unequal distribution of features. It just doesn't work as well. So we went back to the drawing board, and what we ultimately decided on was to start in the northwest corner and do a clockwise circle around the perimeter of the park. And you still stop at every feature that you come across and count the poles there. But then after completing the outer perimeter, you then spiral in to get any remaining poles. Additionally, how we actually numbered the poles is we came up with a plan of using the first 3 letters from the park name, followed by a number, followed by a suffix of either AL or SL for area light or sport light. Area lights are all odd numbered to allow for any potential future installations, while sport lights follow normal numbering conventions. And when you're counting the light fixtures on the poles, we decide you stand on the south side of the pole, so looking north, and just count it like reading a book, so left to right and top to bottom, with the exception of being directional lights where you'll face the light instead of always facing north. And so here's the actual path that we took on our Clark Park study. I see we started in the northwest corner and then stopped at every feature, counting the poles there before moving on, and then ultimately ended up back on the west side of the park. And so as far as deliverables for this project go, I made a web map that with using ArcGIS Online, and that's showing the orange dots are the poles on the map. And then also made data tables. For this is the poles data table, and it has the park name, the pole ID, the material of either concrete or metal, and then the mounting of either in-ground, surface, or sleeve, and then a manufacturing date, which only concrete poles had. And then additionally, there's the fixture data table, which has the pole ID, so you can relate the 2 tables together. The fixture ID, which we decided to use the pole ID and then add a suffix of a hyphen and then the number, and then followed by the type of fixture, so either A for area light, BK for basketball, V for volleyball, or BB for baseball. And as far as next steps go, I'd like to add an additional field of just area or sport and to improve sorting, because right now when you try and sort it alphabetically, it goes from area light 1 to sport light 1 instead of going to the next area light. Additionally, I'd like to test out some new parks and start collecting locations for service entrance section, or SES cabinets and timers, which the tables have already been made. We just haven't actually gone out and collected the information yet. And that concludes my presentation, so thank you.
I don't know about you, but I keep learning something new. I didn't know about the left to right and the clockwise. So the next intern I'd like to present is Mark Torrance, who worked with the Office of Strategic Management and Diversity. Filmmaking is his studies.
Hi, everyone. Hi, Mom. So the project I worked on is called Strategic Management Digital Engagement. A little bit about me is, my name is Mark Torrance. I'm a junior at Arizona State University, and I'm majoring in filmmaking studies. And the reason I chose filmmaking studies is because I took an intro to TV class in my high school, and I really liked it, so decided to pursue it. And my whole life, I've been in Tempe my whole entire life, and it's a cool place, I gotta say. I don't know if I timed my slides just right. All right, so my project is involved with the performance measure 2.15, participating in a city decision-making process. And that's under the council priority of strong community connections, which focuses on developing and maintaining a strong community connection by emphasizing the importance of an open government, customer service, and communications with community members. So my goal for this project is to advance community engagement and create visual images to document the city's management program. And to do this, I would provide visual images that represent Tempe both geographically and demographically. And so basically, I'm taking this engagement and doing it in a media form and to showcase what the city has to offer. So I was one of the lucky interns because I got to do these interviews, and I got to meet every one of these interns and learn a little bit about their projects. So they all know me, and so we had to I had to conduct these interview questions, conduct video interviews, and these videos are up on the Tempe website right now, so you can go look at them. And basically, these are a chance for community members to get to know who is working at the city of Tempe and what projects and who's involved and how they can get involved. Yeah, my timing's a little off, I apologize. So this is just a screenshot of the Meet the Interns webpage. So I asked them about themselves, so I made a little bio, I took a video biography of them, and it was an opportunity for them to tell the community a little bit about themselves. So everyone here is probably familiar with Tempe Accelerates, but those who aren't, it's an opportunity for the city to present their performance measures. And even if you are familiar with Tempe Accelerates, not everyone knows that it's done digitally as well. And we are actually streaming it, and the sessions air on Tempe 11, and you can watch it both live and on the YouTube channel. And so here's a screenshot of it. And on the website, I noticed that I really liked how you can write down suggestions digitally rather than in person. So if you can't make it in person, you can offer a suggestion digitally. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a video montage for the Tempe Accelerates program, and I'm basically gathering highlights from these sessions and compiling them into a video to showcase what it's all about, what Tempe Accelerates is, and how it basically works. And I'm providing a voiceover and things to showcase what it's all about. So why is this beneficial? It can showcase opportunities through media. You can get to know the staff. You can get to know a better understanding of what Tempe has to offer. It widens the accessibility for someone who's not necessarily in this downtown area can access it through digital means by whether that be the Tempe website, or they can access anything on their phone or watch the videos. So it's a way to engage with the community in a digital form. So what I've learned is communication is key. Collaborating ideas is a way to find what's best, get the best product, use your resources, ask for help, see what there is to offer, and always try your best. I think everyone, thank you all for listening.
So we'll go from Mark, who was born and raised in Tempe, to all the way across the globe to William Jingo. And William is a senior majoring in public policy. You're senior, right? Okay, at ASU. So thank you, William.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is William Jingo. I've been working on youth safety and juvenile crime diversion metrics with the Kids Zone Enrichment Program. I'm off on the timing. Yeah. Okay. Originally, our performance measure is 1.32, and it reads to achieve a Tempe rate of juveniles affected by crime less than the national benchmarks. Originally, this performance measure was based solely on juvenile crime, but we wanted to incorporate juvenile victims in order to get a clearer picture of how our kids are affected by crime in Tempe. Okay. As part of my internship, I was able to gather national statistics, and they are divided into the 2010 census regions. So you can see each region has different rates on the juveniles affected by crime. And because in Tempe we strive to be the best nationally, we chose 2.6, which is the lowest region, to be our target goal. and our calculated national average is 3.05%. We got these numbers from the Tempe Police Department, and we focused on 2017 as our year of focus because it's the most recent statistic. And we looked at the arrest of juveniles, which stood at 111. We looked at juvenile crime, which stood at 378. And that gives us a total of 489 juveniles affected by crime. Now, as we saw in the previous slide, we wanted to be the best nationally, and that means we have to reduce the number of juveniles affected by crime by 45%, which reduces the number to 147, down from 489. These are parameters. Our current Tempe baseline is 4.73, and our target goal is 2.60%. Where does our performance measure matter? Tempe greatly cares about its kids. These are the next generation of workers and taxpayers in our communities. And to ensure successful transition from childhood to adulthood, we need to tackle what we call adverse childhood experiences. As you can see on our screens, there are different numbers of ACEs, adverse childhood experiences, and these particular effects can have two major effects on our children, either make them victims of crimes or perpetrators of crimes themselves. And as they transition to adulthood, they carry with them these effects, and they are more likely to influence more kids while in their adulthood, and the cycle keeps going on and on. So essentially our goal is to break this vicious cycle of ACEs. How? Through city programs. Programs that take kids and put them in positive environments, such as Kids Zone, libraries, recreational programs, arts and cultures, that help the children, prevent them from adverse conditions. These are environments that are stable, and they help the kids develop cognitive skills and emotional resilience that is needed to thrive in adulthood. Possible partners for this project could be, but not limited to, Human Services, Care 7, Tempe Police Department, the Tempe Courts, and together the formula is participation plus quality programming, which equals to safe and secure communities. We defined youth as anyone ages 5 to 17, but available data focuses on children of ages 12 to 17. However, the programs that I've mentioned have impact on the kids, and the impact is relevant not only for the kids of 12 to 17, but also from people ages 5 to 17. So our validity for the data is justified. To conclude, Tempe depends on its ability to foster the health and well-being of its youth, and collectively we can create healthy, safe, and secure communities, not only for our kids, but for the whole population, because we can see the effects not only affect the individual, but has impacts on the whole community. With that, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah.
You're trilingual now, aren't you? Well, thank you all for coming. Want to again thank our site supervisors who supported each of the interns, and the departments and the department directors who got on the bus and said, yes, we're going to help move forward some performance measures through this hyper focus with our interns. And with the interns, congratulations. You do have 2 more weeks still, but at least this part is done and you can focus on finals and your projects. So with that, thank you very much.